If I may have your attention, please. At this time, we're going to begin the service here in the sanctuary for Mrs. Sandra Sklar. As we begin the service, I would ask if any of you may have a cell phone or any other noise-making device, please turn them off at this time. Officiating the services here today are Rabbi Karen Kadar and Cantor Jennifer Frost.
Stan, how many times have you and Sandra sat in this, not exactly in the front row, you weren't front row people. As a matter of fact, you were more of a room 10 guy, but Sandra wasn't. And now we're here to say goodbye, and this is what we like to call here at BJBE, when it's appropriate, and for sure this moment it is appropriate, that today we say goodbye to BJBE royalty. A dear, precious sister of this congregation. So we turn to the Psalms. Esainai el harim me'ayin yavo Ezri. I lift my eyes to the mountains. What is the source of my help? Ezri me'im Adonai oseh shamayim va'aretz. My help comes from God, who is the maker of heaven and earth. God will not let your foot give way. Your protector will not slumber. See, the protector of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. God is your guardian, your protection at your right hand.
Esainai el harim me'ayin yavo Ezri. Ezri me'im Adonai oseh shamayim va'aretz. Hine lo yanum velo yishan, shomer Yisrael. Hine lo yanum velo yishan, shomer Yisrael. Esainai el harim me'ayin yavo Ezri. Ezri me'im Adonai oseh shamayim va'aretz.
About 21 years ago, I was teaching a group of the women of this congregation at a sisterhood retreat and was told absolutely, with great passion, by a small group of them, that when the day comes that I will bury them, I should not read A Woman of Valor. So Cantor and I kind of live on eggshells a little bit because I keep thinking, Wait, which was the one who said that to me? But Sandra was one of the ones who said that to me. She did not like women of valor, but wow, what a woman she was. So her son, Dan, wrote an alternative which passed her approval, and Cantor Frost is going to read it now.
Eshet Chayil, where can a strong woman be found? Where is a woman's strength to be found? Her worth cannot be measured. Her status as a wife and mother doesn't define her. It may be where her attributes begin, but it's not where they end. And even though she may cater to her husband's needs, her inner life is rich and vibrant, and there is depth to her that she only reveals to those in her closest circle. Her hands know more expressiveness than darning socks and blankets require. She is provider, hunter and gatherer she. She looks after her household, but domesticity alone does not her a grave disservice. She is the source of water, wells, and wellness. Without her, plants wither on the vine. She is the very definition of strength, both mental and physical. She is her own reward, but she redounds to those who depend upon her. She is virtuistic and accomplished in her own endeavors. Her hand reaches out to those in need, and she does not look away. She is robed in light and enlightenment. She is winsome white, radiant ruby, and the skein of scarlet. Her partner is puffed with pride, sitting as she stands above. She plies her wares, unequaled in excellence. Her strength is her crown, and her diadem is her fortitude. She is a master teacher, and from her mouth drip pearls of wisdom. She is order and disorder. They coexist in mutuality and finely tuned balance. Those in her circle extol her and praise her. Many women suffer under the slings of oppression, but here we set the record straight. Grace and beauty, wisdom and age. Our woman, she is perfection at every stage. May we sing the unsung and accompanying her glorious ascension. Eshet Chayil.
The 23rd Psalm.
Adonai roi lo echsar binot deshayar bitseini al mei menuchot yenaleini nafshi yeshovev yancheini v'magelei tzedek yancheini v'magelei tzedek leman shemo gam ki yelech megates al mavet lo irara ki ata imadi shivatecha umishanetecha hema yanachamuni ta'aroch lefanai שולחן נגד צורריי. דשנת בשמן ראשי, כוסי רב היה. אך טוב וחסד ירדפוני כל ימי חיי, כל ימי חיי. ושבתי בבית אדוני לאורך ימים. אדוני רואי לא אחסר, אדוני רואי לא אחסר.
The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemy. Thou hast anointed my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. We say with Job, Adonai natan v'Adonai lakach, Yehi Shem Adonai mevorach, which means God has given, God has taken away. Blessed be the name of God. We are an ancient people, well acquainted with grief, well acquainted with the grief and the valley and the shadows. Death and sorrow are not strangers to us, but this is what the centuries teach us, that there is strength in faith and that a good name endures beyond the grave. And she had a good name. So now we say with Job, Adonai natan, God, you have given us a loved one. She will never be forgotten. And for all that was good and enduring in her life, we offer the deepest thanks of our heart. Adonai lakach, and she fought and fought for days on end, and God finally took her away. So we pray for strength, so that our broken hearts can turn into trust, and we can say, Yehi Shem Adonai mevorach, blessed be the name of God, now and forever. It does honor to a person's memory when family members come forth to offer a few words. So I'd like to ask Sam and Ava to come forth to say a few words, and after them, Dan, and then I'll offer my own reflections.
Thank you. Many of you know Sandra and how amazing she is, but I knew her as a grandma who would go to the ends of the earth for me and my brother. She was so amazing and truly inspiring every time I saw her. It's kind of hard to put into words everything that made up Sandra Sklar, but a few things that stick out in my head I would like to share. My grandma was the most caring woman and had a love for spending time. We had a love for spending time together. Just like the other women in my life, she had a real thing for shopping, and it became our favorite thing to do together. We would go to the classic Northbrook Court and shop, and she would always buy me some form of clothes I needed. It could be something that might just sit in my closet, but her face would light up the moment I came out of the dressing room. She was so excited when the clothes fit me perfectly. As I got older, we turned the shopping trips more into coffee first, followed by shopping, and always getting dinner at the end. We would just love spending time together, and I will miss all our shopping trips. She would go above and beyond to make sure I had all the clothes I needed. One moment that sticks out for me is her helping me pick out a prom dress. Even though she couldn't be there with me, she printed out photos of dresses she thought would look great on me and told me she spent hours doing research trying to find the perfect dress. It warms my heart knowing how much she cared and the love she had for others. Being the only granddaughter, and the favorite of course, in the family, it created a special bond between the two of us that will always live on forever. She has been the most loving and amazing woman, and I can't say that enough. When my mom passed away 5 years ago, Grammy came in and saved the day for me. Sorry. Do you want to finish reading it for me?
When my mom passed away 5 years ago, Grammy came in and saved the day for me. The first person to call me after I heard the news was her, and she would keep checking on me days and weeks after, sending me emails and calling me to make sure her granddaughter was hanging in there. Even when I was younger, I saw this same bond grow that I had with Grammy, with her and my mom. They would sit and chat about how the Sklar men were and indulge on Diet Dr. Brown's, their drink of choice, of course. They loved each other so much, and my mom always admired my grandmother. For years to come, they would love seeing each other, and Grammy always wanted updates from me on how my mom was doing. Even in the awkward place Grammy had with my parents being divorced, she was still her loving self towards others. Do you want to finish?
Yeah. Along with Grammy, you can't forget her unique style. With the decorations around her house or the clothes she wore, it was always something special. She had these set of 3 dolls, and as creepy as they might be, they matched her style perfectly. She loved anything with a lot of color and unique pattern. We would go to these Jewish bazaar sales at her temple, and it was her happy place. She'd find the most random things, but somehow always had a need for it. I would come home to my dad from these sales with a few too many purchases, and she would tell me, "Of course you need this purse," or "You will have a need for this random headband." I trusted it so much and would adapt it to my fashion sense. She was always the host at events and would never sit down until everyone was satisfied. We'd be having dinners and the food would be hot on the table and she was running around grabbing drinks and serving silverware. She wasn't happy until everyone was, and most of our food was gone by then. She was an amazing host, especially with her Passover Seders. It was her specialty, and she'd wear this headset and it was the best thing ever. She wanted to make sure everyone could hear her and follow along with the readings. My favorite part of the Seder was when she would throw these frogs on the table, and she gave me a shocked look on how they got there. My younger self definitely thought that they magically appeared, but it was just my superhero of a grandmother. Grammy left a lasting impact on all she met, and she'll be greatly missed. I hope we can all make you proud, Grammy. Thank you for being an amazing role model to me and someone I aspire to be one day. I love you so much.
I just have a few lighthearted words about my grandmother. Over the years, I grew very fond of her sense of style, her mannerisms, her way of living. The craziest thing that I found was that she managed to be able to listen to my grandfather's same war stories for 50 years, the same stories on repeat in a rotation. Another category that stuck out to me was her ability to, whenever we would go out to eat, we would get, she'd order and the food would come, and it didn't matter if it was the biggest steak or just a piece of lettuce. It was the most food she'd ever seen in her life. Our family joked, and she said it too, that she'd say, the food would come and she'd say, "Oh my gosh, it's so much food." It'd be a guarantee. The waiter would be asked for a box. The food would get put in the fridge. A couple days later, my grandfather would throw it out. Several days after that, she'd ask where her, food was. My grandfather would explain, "No, Sandra, you can't eat 6-day-old soggy lettuce from the 1-star Italian restaurant in Northbrook," like clockwork. She could laugh at herself too, though, but there was no changing that habit of hers. Another memory that stuck out to me was a family cruise that we took in 2011. Grammy was thrilled to spend time with the entire family, be out and about with everyone. In one instance, we all got rained on, or some of us got rained on. She had a smile on her face the whole time. She was just excited to be with all of us. Her grandkids, me, Ava, and my cousins over here, were the love of her life. My cousins lived 1,000 miles away in Connecticut, but Grammy was always super excited to give a video call to everyone and see what they were up to. She was always curious about what everybody was doing, even though she didn't really understand it. After I went away to college, I always made it a point to stop by at their house and see them, and she always asked me what I was doing and how school was going, and asked me about computer engineering classes that were way over here. I had more patience to see her than most, but tested me sometimes. Finally, I'm grateful that she was able to see me grow up, graduate from college, and see my successes after college. I got a lot of questions about, what am I doing? What software engineering? What is that? How does a computer work? What's the cloud? I was never going to answer all of these questions, but I tried my best. And again, I never knew where her package was, even though she was always asking, "Where's my Amazon package?" Had no idea. Grammy had been sick for several years now. She had been in nursing home. It weighed on a lot of us tremendously. I ask that everybody remember her for her good times, for her smiles, for the many years of smiling and good times that we all had as a family, for her dedication to her family, for her ability to laugh at herself. These are all traits that I will forever try and emulate in my own life. I miss you, Grammy, and I love you lots, and we'll never forget you.
Yes, little Danny needs his reading glasses. It's like old home week. Unbelievable to see these faces. We can't thank you enough. Cannot thank you enough for being here. Can't or winter. Wow. Love you guys. I speak for my father, my brother Steve, and for myself when I say thank you to all of you for coming today to honor the life of my mother, Sandra Sklar. My mother had a quiet dignity that's difficult to articulate. Much of that quietude was foisted upon her by her time and her circumstance. When my mother was a little girl with tonsillitis, she was treated with a medical breakthrough at the time. Tonsillectomies, the barbaric practice, would soon become a thing of the past. X-ray radiation was the future. And through modern science, a new technique pioneered by a medical group on the south side of Chicago would shrink the tonsils, eliminating the need for surgery. This technique, which ended up requiring surgery anyway, exposed my mother and many children and their throats to harmful X-rays without shielding or protection. Years later, all of the children that participated in this little experiment developed thyroid cancer. The cancer was a ticking time bomb, lying in wait for a young couple, my father and my mother, as they got married and embarked on their new life together. They barely got out of the starting gate before my mother's cancer was discovered, and aggressive surgery was her best shot at overcoming the slow-growing disease, the only silver lining to this worst form of medical malpractice. But the world did not yet understand the dangers of X-rays. And that surgery, along with fluoroscopes, which were foot-measuring X-ray machines ubiquitous in shoe stores in the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, these dangerous relics and surgeries have been all but forgotten. Our family never forgot, however, because it was part of our family story, maybe the family story. If my mom hadn't pulled through with my dad by her side, my brother and I simply would not be here to tell the tale. The thyroidectomy removed most of the right side of my mother's neck. When she was a kid, she used to sing in Max Janowski's choir on the South Side. She loved to sing, and that love endured even when her voice was weakened as a result of the thyroid surgery. And just to set the record straight, I had always assumed my singing voice came down through the family from my great Aunt Frances, who was a vaudevillian and professional singer. But in my shame today, I admit my own failure of imagination. And for this, I owe a great debt of gratitude to my Aunt Linda. Thank you, Linda, for a real aha moment. My voice came from my mother. She was robbed of the fullness of her voice, so I never realized it. Since her first surgery, she had a lingering and chronic hoarseness, but she never lost her sense of pitch, and she loved to sing. She loved to sing. She loved to sing Jewish music, especially, as my niece said, the Passover Seder. The Seder was my mother's delight. She was the master chef in the kitchen, and now I can reveal the secret to her savory brisket, and I encourage you all to try it next year in your marinade, Bennett's chili sauce. Bennett's. You'll thank my mom later. And she was the master chef of the liturgy of the Haggadah. Some of my fondest memories of the Passover are not of the Seder itself, but of the pre-planning sessions in which my father would lobby to cut a few pages here and there in the Baskin Haggadah, and my mother would acquiesce to a cut on page 12, only to hold the line when it came to cherished melodies or prayers that she felt should never be cut for expediency's sake. I truly didn't understand the Passover story until much later in life, but I knew it was existentially important to my mother and my father in their own ways. It was a story of survival, after all, and they were both survivors of the indignities of life. They each knew their fair share of hardship, but they pulled themselves up by their bootstraps, and they survived. The sound of my mother's tuneful, if diminished voice, belting out Seder songs will ring in my ears forever. I know there were times when she wanted to shout to get the attention she deserved. If she could have, she would have let out a yell to deafen the world and to make for change. She grew up at a time when girls didn't have the same opportunities as boys, let's face it. She never became a bat mitzvah, but she was my rabbi just the same. Shira and I discovered some of her poetry in a box from my grandmother, and her writing skills rivaled any English major from any Ivy League school. Her composition, style, and penmanship were exquisite. I've come to realize that my mother never really lost her voice. She simply lent it to her husband and her children. She gave so much of herself that it is impossible to know where she ends and I begin. And as devaluing and upsetting the message we get from Shel Silverstein's The Giving Tree, namely that our mothers give us food and shade and shelter and strength and protection until they have nothing left to give, until they are nothing but a stump in the final frame, useful now only as a stool upon which to sit. As painful as it is for me to accept, this was the message my mother embraced and lived. I think in some ways, this was the very reason she despised so passionately that proverb, a woman of valor. It did not describe the modern woman in all of her complexity and depth, the woman my mother aspired to be. But in truth, the traditional text did describe my mother in more ways than she would probably care to admit. In the final analysis, she won. She succeeded in this thing we call life. She overcame adversity and illness. She found a husband with whom to share life's joys and sorrows, created a home built with love as its foundation and support and encouragement as its frame and load-bearing walls. She raised a family who in turn raised their families. And she knew the unparalleled joy of grandchildren. I'm looking at all of you. Free from the burdens and pushback of parenting, a grandparent shows and knows only unconditional love and perhaps a common enemy. I would be remiss if I did not mention her winning smile, which lit up any room, every room. The smile's partner was her infectious laugh. And if the laughs got going with her cousin Sharon, I hope you're watching, the snorts and giggles had everyone else in stitches just to behold their unbridled joy and sense of humor. And even if you weren't in on the joke, we were all in on the laughs. And if you knew Sandy, then you knew her perpetual tardiness. Maxine, I'm looking at you. It was legendary among our family and friends. But as a first-hand witness behind the scenes, the true reason she ran so late was her need to feel not just presentable, but perfectly coiffed and made up. Whether it was going to a show with friends or simply to Sunset Foods, her hair and nails, her whole ensemble had to be absolutely perfect. For someone who had experienced visibly disfiguring surgery, she overcompensated with couture and clinique. And even if true perfection is unattainable, she sought it nonetheless. In the book of Exodus, the Torah tells us that the Ark of the Covenant was to be overlaid with gold, inside and out. But why on the inside? Since no one would ever see the interior. Because the teaching isn't just for show. It is precisely what's inside that counts. Mom, you were golden through and through. When God made you, the angels broke the mold. May you find perfect rest under the wings of the divine presence, and may your memory be a blessing to us all.
I find it so interesting how people meet their loved ones. And Stan, I was thinking about that incredibly beautiful moment we had with your family the other day, and how exuberant you were to tell the story, and how completely known and understood Sandra was to her husband, to her children, and to her grandchildren. And that's not always the case. We're not always seen and known, and she was known. She was not invisible in your eyes. And that beautiful golden soul that she had was shining for everybody. But I asked you, Stan, how did you all meet? And you said, oh, it's a blind date. And it wasn't until a few words later that I understood, at least from my perspective, how God's hand was in all of this. So the story goes, apparently, and you know it, you lived it, and you can tell it better, and you should tell it time after time after time, that your father died when you were a lad. And your family moved to the Chicago area to live with relatives, small quarters. And you said to me at one point, and you don't know what it is to sleep on a plastic-covered sofa and to get up as if your entire skin has been left behind. And all of us kind of like, yeah, we kind of remember that. And you became a stabilizing force in your family. You learned responsibility at a very young age, and then you were on a bus, and you met a guy. And Jack Lieberman, that you just happened to meet on a bus. And this is where I believe that, is Jack here? Yes. This is how I believe God's hand was in this. You met a guy on a bus, and eventually Jack said, hey, I'm dating a girl. You want a double date? And you said, well, it's not too far away to go always the practical, pragmatic guy. All I got to do is walk across the way. And you said yes. And then this is how he tells the story. And I thought I was in a Hollywood movie. She came down the stairs, and his life changed forever. In that one moment, he looked at her and recognized her for the exact person in which would be his partner as destiny unfolded. I said, so Stan, what does that mean? What? He said, I don't know. Something in my heart just said she was the one. So I said, well, was it the same for her? Oh no, she was dating somebody else at the time. And as we continued to tell the story, I had a moment, I don't know, Sandra kind of told me in my ear what she saw in you. Because Sandra, as we all know, because we know her so well, it was an incredibly bright and capable woman. And back in those days, young girls, young women would go to school and they kind of had to hide their intelligence. But I imagine that the two of you met intellect to intellect. She fascinated you, and you fascinated her. And you could have long conversations, and she did not hide because she was always visible to you. And because you had to learn stability and maturity at a very young age, she had no use for the young men that didn't know what they wanted in their life. You knew who you were. She knew who she was. And your hearts came together. Brooklyn met South Shore. And she was a South Sider, no question, and I look upon this group and I know you know what I mean, because I know what you meant. And you told the story so beautiful about, her adversity at a very young age, but the way that Stan told it was, but our life was normal. And you know that wasn't the case, but that's how they lived it, a normal life. She never really had what any of us would consider a normal life. I don't know what that even means to have a normal life. Her parents were divorced. Her mother was, as we would say in the East Coast, a tough cookie. But when I met Sandra, I don't know, maybe 25 years ago now, maybe more, and we worked together at the URJ offices, first thing I knew about Sandra was how devoted she was to her mother and her mother-in-law, both who were falling sick at the same time. All those times she came to work late because she was taking them to doctors, or left early because she had to pick up something from her, and ultimately left the job to become their caretakers. Prolific writer, reader, poet. She raised those children as caring people, not to hold grudges, to live the right way, and her and Stanley had a very strong sense of what the right way was. If you fell short a little bit on an exam or a task you were supposed to be as sons, as children were, she'd say to you, but in your heart, did you try your best? And if you didn't, you felt guilty, and if you did, she said, then never mind. And she was trying to develop, along with her husband, that inner compass. You don't do well to get the grade, you do well because there's a right way to live. And doing right is the right way to live. The Jewish community was the center of her life. We all know this. It was her soulful connection, her intellectual connection, her spiritual connection. You two were bright and capable leaders, and you gave of your gifts freely to this synagogue and to other communities. Apparently, I had never heard this story before, and it's such a great idea. You should do it in the future. Not me, but you. That when there was this sort of what we would call today a gala, there was a raffle, and they raffled off a trip to Israel on a congregational trip. Well, she was in the kitchen, and she got the phone call, and she won the raffle, and she let out a scream as if she won the lottery. Israel! Because that was her heart and soul. She wanted to make sure that the family came together, and in '93, the whole family went, and you told me the beautiful story about standing at the kotel and how the three guys walked over to this great, luxurious part of the kotel, and she had a small, little place to go, and how that changed your heart forever in terms of you, the men in her life, in terms of the place of women in Judaism. For this strong, intelligent, capable woman brought up a household of men who were feminists and understood strong female leadership. She was a great sisterhood president, and perhaps even a greater sisterhood past president. She could lead services, she could read Torah. But here's what the kids said about her. And don't we want our children all to say this about us? As they described their mother, they said she was kindness and goodness and generosity and warmth and welcoming. And she was love in her grandchildren's world. All she wanted to be was in your orbit. So proud to be just present in your lives. Unconditional love. Always in your corner. Okay, Steve, maybe she wanted you to learn violin instead of engineering. But she had your back and held you and was a guiding hand with you. And she delighted in your professions. And yes, Dan, I believe that you have her voice in so many ways. She would read to you, all of you, talk to you. She would listen to you. What would she say right now if she could say something? She would say, look, I lived a good life. I lived a full life. I raised a wonderful family, and she did. As you said, she was sick a long time. A tough cookie. She did not give in to that good night. And I ended up going twice to see her. Cantor, you also went to see her. And every time I went, Stan would say to me, okay, I really appreciate you going. However, just know she will not wake up. She will not speak. She's just really breathing and lying there. And I would say, that's okay. I'll go anyhow. And both times, even the last time, I went and I'd say, hi, Sandra. And she woke up. And she looked at me straight in the eyes, and she knew exactly who I was. I said, want to say the Shema? And she sang with me the Shema. Want to sing Oseh Shalom? And she sang with me Oseh Shalom, all the verses. And then she was tired, not wavering at all in knowing those prayers, because when a person forgets everything, what is it they remember? Shema Yisrael, Oseh Shalom. That's what she remembered. And I said, Sandra, would you like me to pray with you? And she said, yes. And then she closed her eyes. And then her breathing got still. As I said, Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom, God, when I lie down, may it be for peace. V'hamidenu malkeinu l'chaim, and God, when I wake up, let it be for peace and life everlasting. Ufros aleinu sukat shlomecha, and spread over us a canopy of peace. Sandra, you are at peace. Only love, only beauty, only gratitude. And as you hide in the shadows right now from our view, we know it's the shadows of God's wings. You have done valiantly, my dear daughter. The Jewish community is stronger for your presence. Your family is beautiful for your presence. May you rest in peace. And I ask Dan and Shira to come up and to sing one last time to her that prayer, Hashkivenu.
Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leShalom v'hamidenu shomreinu lechaim. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leShalom
Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leShalom Hamidenu shomreinu lechayim.
Hamidenu shomreinu lechayim.
Ushmor tzeitenu uvoenu lechayim shalom ve'ata be'yado lam.
Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu lechaim. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu
We ask that you rise for the memorial prayer. Malei rachamim, shochein b'ramim. Hamtzei menucha nechona tachat kanfei hashchina. Im kiroshim utehorim, gezohar harakia. Mazhiri. Et nishmat Sarah Rachel, Bas Avraham, Umalka, שהלכה לעולמה, בעל הרחמים, יסתיריה בסתר כנפיו לעולמים, ויצרור החיים את נשמתה, אדוני הוא נחלתה, ותנוח בשלום על משכבה, ונאמר Amen.
God of abundant mercy, God most high, may the soul of Sandra, who has gone into eternity, find the gift of perfect peace in your embrace. With holy and pure, whose light shines like the radiance of heaven. Compassionate God, hold her close to you forever so that her soul may be bound up in the bond of life eternal. May she find a home with you. May she rest in peace, as we say. Please be seated.
This concludes the service here in the sanctuary. The interment will take place immediately at the family's plots at Shalom Memorial Park Cemetery, 1700 West Rand Road in Arlington Heights. For those of you that are here today, we've supplied a funeral service folder that you should have. That funeral service folder indicates the correct Shiva time at the Tamarisk North Shore tomorrow from 6 to 9 p.m. with a minyan at 7. We also want to let you know the family will also be observing these Shiva times today on Wednesday. That information for those online have already been updated on the website you're currently watching through. For those of you going in procession with the family, we will be forming the procession in the parking lot. We will make sure you have an orange funeral safety sticker and a flag on top of your car. We would ask that you please have your bright headlights and flashing hazard lights on at all times. As we're driving in procession today, please drive as close as safety permits to the vehicle in front of you at all times. We want to avoid having any large spaces or large gaps in our procession, particularly as we pass through the intersections. One final note for those in attendance and those online, the family has asked that memorial contributions in Mrs. Sklar's name be made here to this congregation and or to Temple Shalom in Norwalk, Connecticut. That information's on the funeral service folder. If you did not receive one, they are available as you depart. The following individuals have been selected to act as pallbearers. As I call your names, if you'd please step forward. Josh Silverman, Ian Warren, Scott Gertz, and Sarah Aronson. At this time, we would ask everyone to please rise as the deceased and her family and the clergy are escorted from the sanctuary. Thank you. Thank you, Rabbi.
Doug, before they go,
Sorry. Bill?
they want you to mention about the lunch afterwards.
Oh,
Return from the cemetery.
is that going to be here? Okay, one final message. Immediately following the interment, the family will be hosting a gathering here at the synagogue immediately following the burial. Thank you.